Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell expected to lay out further details in just moments. We're going to bring those to you live as they come in. With me now to discuss, Jillian Melchior, Wall Street Journal editorial page writer, Bob Cusack, editor-in-chief of The Hill, and Christopher Bedford, editor-in-chief of the Daily Caller News Foundation. Bob, let me start with you. Listen, they're going to get it done. What I find fascinating is that 24 hours ago, it felt like any kind of compromise would mean that 2 or 3 people were going to say no. How do they put together a deal where almost every single Republican is going to say yes? To me, when they do the math on this bad boy, it's going to be expensive.
Yeah, a very impressive win for the Republican Party, which obviously had a devastating loss on health care earlier this year. So I think that they're going to pass this bill and they're going to merge it with the House. I don't think it's going to be hard to merge these bills. I think they're going to do it very quickly, and they could get it done as early as next week. This is going to end the year for a big win for congressional Republicans and President Trump. It is a sweeping tax cut bill, and I think it's going to be signed into law fairly soon. Jillian, getting a legislative win this size, a premier issue for President Trump on his economic agenda, will be a W. But once we live with this bill, will we feel the same way if they do keep the AMT, if we have the repatriation at 14% rather than 5% where Bush had it and it really did work, and if we have some of the other issues in here that aren't necessarily with the conservative orthodoxy, and certainly not what we heard from conservatives over the past 8 years or so?
Well, so I think the most important thing to stay focused on is that you've got that corporate tax rate at 20%. That's a game changer for U.S. economic growth. And I think what we're seeing now is what the price is for senators to get them on board with this. AMT, not great, complicates the tax code, doesn't help with efficiency or simplicity. But that's worth it for the 20% rate. And I think we're seeing a lot of those little compromises being made. It's not the best way to legislate, but it's sure better than what we have right now.
It certainly would be a big W in your opinion.
It would.
All right, Christopher Bedford, how are you looking at this?
I think it's also a big win. The 20% tax rate for the corporations, that's such a huge win. It would have taken another 10 years for the GOP to have even a shot at doing this, which is why it's surprising that so many Republicans took so long to get to the finish line here, and that we still see Senator Corker holding back. I guess they decided that these were kind of window dressings, the AMT and also the repatriation tax. They were willing to take it as long as there wasn't a poison pill that they were suggested earlier, like a tax hikes if the deficits continue to rise, which is a funny thing to hear from the GOP, that they should raise taxes to deal with deficits.
Yeah, but Bob, you might hear, from the mainstream media, and I think even some folks in the heartland, that this bill maybe skews still too much to the richest folks out there. Some of the things that were promised, some of the eliminations of things that were promised, incentives for mutual funds rather than individual investors and things like that. Are those legitimate concerns? And even though in the greater scope of things, we know a win is a win, particularly to Jillian's point, 20% corporate tax rate.
Yeah, no, I think the Republicans are a little vulnerable to those claims. The bill is certainly more popular than the Republican health care bill that failed, but it's not super popular, so they're going to have to sell it. The bottom line, Charles, is what this bill, this law, is going to do to the economy. And the economy is humming along, and if it really has the growth that Republicans are promising, which is, these are big promises, then that could really do well for the Republican Party come the midterm elections. However, if it doesn't, and there's not much of an impact, and most people feel like they're paying, some people feel like they're paying more taxes, that's a real problem. So Trump has to sell this, and he's pretty good at selling things.
No, he is pretty good at selling things, and of course it doesn't hurt when you have a record-breaking stock market. You have incredible economic data. Almost every day something comes out. Today it was more manufacturing data that shows that the gears of the economy have moved into the proper places. So, but now will be the quote-unquote trickle down.
Yeah.
How quickly before someone in Idaho, someone in Iowa, someone in other parts of the country, Ohio, for instance, which went from blue to red, will they start to see this kind of impact in their paycheck?
Well, I think they're going to see it pretty quickly. And, the markets are one indication of this. But the other thing that is in this tax bill that I actually really like, even though it's going to make my own taxes go up, is the state and local tax deduction, the elimination of that. I think that that's a really important facet of it, because what it's going to do is, in these liberal states, put the pressure on politicians, on state houses, to be more responsible fiscally. And that's something that voters can affect. They're going to be feeling those taxes. And it's a way of holding Democrats responsible for the fiscal devastation that they brought.
Well, that's so brave of you. You're okay. You're willing to take a hit for the rest of the country.
Well, I mean, why should my parents in Wyoming be subsidizing my taxes in New York City? That's not fair. I think that's good for the heartland.
And that's going to be one of the easier things now because the Senate and the House are on the same page, Chris. But what are some of the other issues when they come to when they have to merge the House and Senate version of these? Could there be any problems?
Just anything that they've seen when they've seen the increase in taxes. Like Republicans promised to get rid of the AMT taxes. They said that we're going to get rid of it. We're going to simplify the tax code. And now it's back in there. I guess it can't go away. Maybe the House GOP will push back further on that. Also, Senator Flake saying that he wants a vote up or down on DACA, on the Dreamers deal, and he wants it quickly with leadership. The House of Representatives already said basically no. McCarthy said we've got more things to deal with right now. We're not going to look at a vote like that until March. But the House GOP under Paul Ryan, which has passed almost the entire Trump agenda so far while it's stalled in the Senate, I think they're so hungry for a win that they're going to be able to get it through. And they've got a bigger majority there than they do in the Senate. So they're going to be able to push it through no matter what.
Bob, doing the math there, if they were to lose more blue state representatives, of course they lost a fair amount, but there were still some out there who suggested that if this was still in the ultimately in the final version of a bill, then they would vote against it. Is there enough? Or, could that be a problem?
It could be a problem. I think there are only 13 House Republicans who voted no the first time around, so they have some votes to play with. If you add up the New York Republicans, California Republicans, and New Jersey Republicans, you're looking over 30, and 24 torpedoes the bill. But I still think they're going to get it, and I don't think they're going to have to sweat that much. The big thing is that the Senate did not change how big the tax cut bill is. The House was saying if you do that to appease Corker, we're not going to support this thing. They didn't change the corporate tax rate. That was a non-starter. You couldn't change it to 22, or Trump was not going to sign it, and the Freedom Caucus wasn't going to go for it. So I think they've eliminated the poison pills, and it's just a matter of, okay, you get this, I get this, cut it in the middle, and let's vote again.
Bob, you just mentioned Senator Corker, and of course Flake is still out there. He could still go either way. A lot was made today of the power individuals leaving the Senate had over, essentially holding not just this bill hostage, but America hostage. Is there some sort of political message here that we should be mindful of in the future?
Well, I think they're more free agents. I mean, Flake and Corker have gone at it with Trump very publicly, and that was the concern, that personal stuff was going to get in the way. I think getting John McCain was a huge win for the Republican Party. McCain voted against the Bush tax cuts, has been at odds with Trump repeatedly throughout this year, but he still said yes, even though he killed the health care bill, that he was going to vote for the tax cut bill. So he was able to put, I think, his personal feelings aside and say, this is a good bill.
Good bill, even though they had things like a whole lot of credits in there, that particularly like the child credit.
Yeah.
Is this also, can we say that this is also perhaps the first sign of the new Republican Party, the Trump Party, with a little bit of Ivanka's ideas in there, some of his perhaps middle leanings from being a New Yorker, those kind of things, all meld into an ultimate tax bill that reflects the new Republican Party?
Well, I'll put it this way. I don't think that Republicans should be supporting things like the child tax credit, in that I would rather see everybody get a tax cut to spend on whatever they want than some people get a tax cut for government incentivized behavior. That would be my preference. That said, I think the lesson with healthcare was how do or die this is for Republicans. If you've got somebody who's not consistent in the way that Trump has been politically, he's going to be judged not on his principles, but on what he's able to accomplish. And I think the Republican Party's fate is so tied up in his. This is do or die for them. And I think they learned that lesson with healthcare the hard way, for sure.
I think so. All right. Thank you all very, very much.